Well, you're looking at Glacier National Park. And I'm Dave Paulides, Canine Missing Project, a copyrighted edition for our video page. And for people visiting Glacier this year, things have changed. I never get up really early in the morning. I'm more of a night person. I've always worked nights, and for you that have listened to me on various radio shows, you know, I most commonly do a radio show from late at night. And I got up really early this morning. I never get up early. Got up at 6 o'clock in the morning because I wanted to get inside the park and film for you. But I couldn't. I have a pass. I paid for a pass, but I can't get in. The reason being is that the Park Service, in their infinite wisdom, decided to restrict the flow into Glacier on a permit-only basis. So if you're coming to the park now, you better check the park site and get your permit to enter the park before you arrive. From 6 a.m. to 5 p.m., nobody goes in that park between now and September without a permit. Yeah, it doesn't seem right sometimes, but they said that they had too many people last year, so they had to restrict the flow this year. Yeah, I'm mad. Many Montana residents are upset because we can't go in. So they advertised that it was 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. So I got here at 6:30. Guess what? I couldn't get in. Everything was roadblocked. No permit, no entry. Typical of the Park Service, poor communication. So I'm telling you so you know, 6 a.m. to 5 p.m. you cannot get in the Glacier National Park without a permit between, well, now it's May 27th and September. Just so you know. Just some regular business. Don't buy my books on Amazon, but please, if you've read one of my books, any of my books, everyone goes to Amazon to read the reviews and make a decision if they want which book. So please, if you've read one of my books, go to Amazon and leave a review. If you've watched one of my movies, go to Amazon and leave a review. It'd be greatly appreciated. If you're here, give me a thumbs up. Heard something back there. Make sure you're still subscribed, because that's been an ongoing issue for months and months. Just so you do know, I am on Twitter, David Paulides at Canine Missing. But lately, Twitter, out of the blue, decides to roll back my numbers on my subscribers. Now, I filed a complaint a couple days ago against somebody who was impersonating me on Twitter. Within hours of filing the complaint, my numbers on Twitter were reduced significantly. Mad, yeah. I've been trying to live by their rules for a long time, keep my mouth shut, but I'm getting mad again. So when I went to college, I was a pretty good student. I was lucky enough to get into Berkeley, University of California, Berkeley. I spent 2 years there because that's all I could handle. I spent 2 years there getting bombarded by professors, not because my grammar was bad, not because my English was bad, because the papers were very well written, according to the professors, but I got graded down in my classes because of my viewpoints about law enforcement, my viewpoints about our society, my viewpoints about the Constitution. And I'd take it home and I'd show my parents and I'd say, I'm not getting graded down because I'm a bad writer or because the logic I use doesn't make sense. It's because the logic I used didn't follow what they wanted. I remember sitting down at a pretty famous person's desk who was a guest lecturer for this series on political science. And he sat me down and he said, Dave, you're never going to make it in this world. Your thoughts and your ideas are never going to work in our society. And this person believed in the overthrow of the Constitution, believed our society was messed up, believed that we should give everything and be on welfare. And it was a horrific sit-through meeting for a very young boy at the time. I think I was 19, getting hammered by this famous constitutionalist, liberalist, about my views. I was so upset, I nearly quit right there. I politely said, you know, this is what our Constitution says. This is what our forefathers wanted. And he said, no, that's not what it is. We need to change. We need to overthrow these governments. We need to do this. We need to do that. After 2 years of hearing this crap and being highly irate, I left. And I eventually went to the University of San Francisco, which was a Jesuit school, which didn't push a political agenda, which is what I believe education should be. There should be no agenda except speaking the truth. Now, about freedom of speech. I think I'm smart enough to listen to all opinions. I don't need a third party to restrict the flow to hear about what you think. I don't even care if it's a lie. Throw it out there. Because you know what? What's one person believes is true, the other person may not. As an example, hydroxychloroquine. When President Trump was saying that this is what he was taking and the doctors had given him, Facebook and Twitter cut all of that out and didn't believe it was true and didn't want it out there. Guess what? It is true. And it is something that I know a series of physicians are using right now to cut down on the seriousness of COVID, hydroxychloroquine. And in fact, an NBC physician that I saw on NBC the other day talked about how it is something that could be used very viably at the early onsets of COVID to help. So again, they cut it out early, but guess what? It is true. It can help. Now, it's Memorial Day weekend. It's one of the most important holidays in my world for a variety of reasons. Now, Memorial Day isn't Veterans Day. Memorial Day is respecting our soldiers that have given their lives for us. And I believe it's also to respect the Gold Star families that have lost a loved one. I remember when I went to Washington, D.C., and I walked through the National Cemetery, I could not get over all of the gravestones. I was stunned. And to think about how many people gave their lives, men and women, for us to live here in freedom. Everybody from all over the world is rushing to come into our country right now because they know how good we have it. And I know it's hard for some of you to understand that we should respect the sacrifices of the men and women that have gave their lives for us to live here today and to talk as we do. The ultimate sacrifice is beyond anything I could ever give enough appreciation for. One of the big things that I've always remembered in my life, since I was 3 or 4 years old, the only race that my family ever watched was the Indianapolis 500. And a lot of it had to do with respecting our country. And at Indianapolis, they respected the men and women of the military immensely. And I remember my folks always stopping everything what they were doing and watching that beginning segments of the race and talking to me about it because of how important it is. So the only race that I may watch this year will be the Indy 500. And that's where I'll be in front of my TV Sunday morning. So I have one letter I want to read to you today. Dave, I feel your pain. Although I haven't lost a child, my husband of 60 years passed away 6 years ago. And no, it didn't get any easier, just the pain isn't so sharp, like a knife tearing into your heart. If there's any consolation in what I'm about to write, I hope what I say is at the very least will give you some peace of mind and soul. Some years ago, I had a near-death experience. I won't go into the entire experience or the possible reason that I was showed this mysterious phenomena. Just know that your son followed his path, as was his plan before he was born. We all have a path to follow, to teach, to learn. Your son has taught you. Parents can guide our children and teach right from wrong, but we cannot live our lives through our children. Your son is in a new dimension, quote unquote, my idea of an afterlife. Some refer to it as a real home. He's surrounded in love so intense, it is almost too much to bear. Don't beat yourself anymore. Just remember him and be glad you and he were in the same time frame and you had him as your child. Think about what he taught you, to you and your family. And Dave, this is serious. I wouldn't lie about this. Lots of love. So people, you may not know this, but I can guarantee for a fact I wouldn't be standing here without Ben. What I mean about that is that Ben came home from school after he graduated from Miami University in Ohio. Came home and he had time and he said, "Hey Dad, let's do a couple videos about your work." And he was going on to film school, had been accepted to USC. And we went out, we did a series of videos and he put them up on YouTube. And you can see them and they're the ones that are right at the very beginning. There's like a black screen that starts and it has the names of the people. We went out into the field and filmed for a couple weeks. And he did such a good job that we had discussions about it. And that's what led into making our first movie, Missing 411. And the link is on here on the pinned site or under descriptions of the video. Now, if you click on the link and it doesn't go through, it's because YouTube isn't allowing that movie in your country. I don't have any control over where the movie's viewed. That's entirely up to YouTube Movies. But I can guarantee you in the United States that film is still being seen for free, and we posted it up there for free for you to see. So Ben gave me the gift of video, and I saw its value because I know a lot of people don't want to read my books. Now, the vast majority of everything I do here is because of the books. It's because that's really the main source of income for me. If people don't buy the books, I'm really not going to be able to do much. And I'm not going to be able to do the research that's needed. Going to the locations, doing the research, writing down what we find out and what we determine. So the support for the books. I've never, ever taken a donation, and I won't. If you look at the reviews on Amazon, books are very well done in the opinion of others. And I would appreciate it if everybody contributed at some level by purchasing a book. If you don't want to read it, donate it to a library. But it's that gift from Ben that really turned the corner on the visibility of this topic. Without his gift, I would doubt you would even be watching this. And I know I probably wouldn't even be here. So, thank you, Ben. I know you're watching. So we're going to talk about a few cases here today that I want you to think about, and I want you to repost this video on your social media. First case involves a little boy, 3 years old, from Wimauma Falls, Florida. Now, if you've had kids, remember what your child had the ability to do at 3 years old. I remember mine, and they were all pretty lazy. And we'd go to the park and we'd play for a while, and just a half hour, 45 minutes of playing, and put them in the car, and on the ride back to the house, they'd be asleep. And I think that's pretty normal for young kids. But boy's name was Vernon Holland. And Vernon and his mom were visiting his uncle's ranch on May 25th, 1945. It was a Friday. And they were playing, and about 1 p.m., while being at the ranch, the mom realized she couldn't find Vernon. Well, his uncle's name was Woodrow McLeod. And Woodrow was a pretty well-off person. He had a big ranch. And all of his ranch hands helped, and they couldn't find him, and they called the DeSoto County Sheriff in Florida. And very quickly, when the sheriff arrived, he realized something was wrong. And he also realized that he had limited ability to search because he didn't have that many deputies on duty. Well, he called the Carlstrom Airfield, and that was just south of the location where these people were at, which was Arcadia, Florida, just on a suburb of Arcadia. You might hear some geese in the background. So Carlstrom soldiers arrived, 1,000 of them within hours, and they started to search shoulder to shoulder. Then they spread out to 5 feet, then to 10 feet between them and searching. Well, as they were searching, they were about 4 miles away, and they found clothing belonging to Vernon. Now, they found this in the first 7 hours, which is pretty hard to believe, because everything you read about missing kids Vernon's age, they'll be found 95% of the time within 3 miles or less. 95% of the time. So to find his clothes 4 miles away within about 7 hours, doesn't make sense. So they're searching for days, and they're calling for more searches, and they're not finding anything. Well, they thought that they were following tracks. Every once in a while they would see some, and they kept getting further and further away. So Monday, and he disappeared on a Friday at 1. Monday morning, they are on a path, a cow path, 15 miles away from where Vernon was last seen. And they're on this cow path, and they find Vernon deceased, laying on the ground. Now, I want you to understand that finding somebody deceased on the ground 15 miles away, being a little boy, is highly, highly, highly unusual. Here comes the train. Well, the coroner arrived, took the body, and they determined he died Saturday. He disappeared Friday. They said he died Saturday, about 23 hours after he disappeared, 15 miles away. Understand something. Little kids do not hike in the dark. They do not move in the dark. They lay down and sleep. So Vernon did not walk 23 hours nonstop, guaranteed. He would have been way too tired. So he lay down and he slept for at least 8 hours. That was everyone's opinion, which meant he was hiking for 15 hours. If he hiked for 15 hours, he was not hiking a mile an hour. Not that little kid. 90% of the adults couldn't make it through the swampland that Vernon was in that time frame because it was brutal. So Vernon was German. He was missing clothing. He was all around water everywhere. The distance traveled was 2 to 3 times or 4 times as much as a maximum child of that age would travel. He was going through a palmetto jungle. That's how it was described. There were deadly snakes. There were animals. Yet he was never touched. Now, when he was found, there was contrary articles written saying that there were marks on his body, and he appeared to be attacked post-death by man or animal. And then the physician said that there were no marks on his body. Very strange. I read about 15 articles about this, and they were up and down, backwards, all over the map. I couldn't understand it. This train is going to come by here, right behind you. You're going to be able to see it soon. I swear, every time I record, this darn train comes by. So anyhow, Vernon Holland, not a funny story. 3 years old, disappeared May 25th, 1945. Now, just so you know, I'll give you some reference here. This is Arcadia, Florida. He disappeared south of Arcadia. This is Wimauma. This is Tampa. So you kind of get in the viewpoint of, this is sort of southwest Florida. This area down through here and all through here, very thick, almost like a jungle, like they said. Extremely thick still to this day, even though it's 60 years later. Next case involves 2 missing people. Very, very unusual that 2 people disappear in the same area near the same time frame, especially an area where it's extremely remote and there isn't much going on. First case involved a young boy named Stafford, 16 years old, and he was disabled. Broke his leg real bad when he was young, and he had to move around on crutches. Well, he and his family and friends were at a place called Cochetopa Pass in Colorado. And his friends decided to hike, and he wanted to go out hiking with them. This was on August 16th, 1930. So, this is an area, Monte Vista, Colorado, South Fork, Swatch. I know it looks like Sagawatch, but it's pronounced Swatch. Cochetopa Pass, 10,000 foot elevation. This area in here is high desert. And I had a friend that moved just south of Swatch, really good friend, who moved there a number of years ago. There goes the train. So anyhow, my friend moved there, and I hadn't known much about the area, so I looked it up. Strangely, that area of Swatch and the eastern part of that valley is one of the top areas in the world for UFOs. And I sent it to my friend. He kind of freaked out. He didn't know. And I'm not saying that has anything to do with it, but I didn't know anything about the region, so I was looking it up and I sent it to him. Now, Stafford Sellers disappeared. He disappeared, but he was on crutches, so how far could he go? They sent in search and rescue, and within a day, they found him. There was nothing about how they found him, where he was, or the circumstances, other than he disappeared on August 16th. He was found on August 17th. Now, in the same pass, a couple miles away, just down the highway, there was a young girl named Felize Maez, M-A-E-Z, 7 years old, who disappeared from her family farm in that area. About 10,060 feet, missing from her home. The same search and rescue team that looked for Stafford took off and started to look for Felize. 75 ground searchers. They brought in teams on horseback. They brought in the Air National Guard from Denver. They flew for 3 days. The governor of Denver actually intervened and said, hey, we're going to start looking harder for this girl. 7 years old. They didn't think she could go far. They found one print near a creek a couple miles from her home. One small print that they thought might be hers. Lots of big boulders in this pass. Water, because it was found near a creek. They brought in canines, no scent trail. Double disappearance, highly unusual. They had search teams there for a week. Felize was never found. Very weird. And I just know that destroyed her family. But the articles both brought up the fact that one boy found, one girl not found. And in high elevation like that, let me tell you, if you're not used to it, as a searcher, it'll drain you quickly. I have a lot of friends that came out and joined us in Colorado, and we took them to Rocky Mountain National Park. That's about 7,000 or 8,000 feet. And many of them they couldn't even move around. They were so exhausted and tired. And they got altitude sickness, a few of them. So yeah, don't think just because you think you're in good shape that you can move around these areas easily. Very difficult. Felize Maez, never found. Next case is a Texas case. And let me show you the map where it was located. It's at Garner State Park. This is San Antonio. Garner State Park is just west. And Highway 90 crosses between the area south of Garner and San Antonio. The boy's name was John McCandless. John was 6 years old, missing 9/1/62, September 1st, Saturday. It was Labor Day weekend, about 6 or 7 p.m. His family traveled from Corpus Christi, Texas, drove up to the park, and was going to spend the long weekend. When they got there, Dad said he was going to go use the restroom, and he walked about 100 yards. And he thought his son was right behind him. And he used the restroom, he came out and couldn't find John McCandless, 6 years old. Family and friends searched for an hour and a half, couldn't find him, and they called park officials who called the sheriff. So the park officials immediately called Texas Highway Patrol and the Texas Rangers, and they were there that night. Within hours of the next day, within 12 hours, they had 1,000 searchers in the park. They walked shoulder to shoulder. There's something called the Frio River that's right near there. They brought in skin divers. They brought in air support. Shoulder to shoulder for 3 days. On September 4th, 1962, one says a ranger, another one says it's a Texas Ranger, was going through the park. And the center point of the search was the restroom. Remember where he disappeared. And right outside the restroom, 15 feet away, was the septic tank. And it had a cement top on one top, and it had wooden planks on the other top. There were 2 entry points. That tank had been searched at least 4 to 5 times, they said. Well, this one ranger pulled open the tank top again, looked inside, and found a body floating, face down. It was John McCandless. He was dead. And they took it out, took the body out, and the Uvalde County Sheriff, just hours before John was found, says he was 100% convinced that John was not in the park. This was made hours before he was found. And he was convinced because every place had been searched 4 to 5 times. Think about it. You have point of separation between John and his dad. You have an area that had been searched at least 4 to 5 times. Water in the Frio River, liquid in the septic tank. They had multiple dog teams in there. They couldn't find a scent trail. There were 2 lids on the tank, and the lids were not disturbed. So, again, it's almost immediately after the top law enforcement agency says he's not here that they find him there. How did that happen? I've cited these things happening so many times that you have to think that it's something really odd. This is not an indictment of search and rescue in the least. It's an indictment of our paradigm on this issue. It's almost as though whatever's happening just says, oh yeah, you're saying he's not here? Well, I'm gonna make you look like a fool. And then they find the body. What would cause that ranger to come back to that site a fifth or sixth time? What was it? Was he given some kind of thought process to go look again? What tingled in his mind that caused him to look? How did John get inside the tank if the tops weren't disturbed? Why would a 6-year-old boy even go into a tank? Or maybe some would say, well, maybe he fell. And that's what some of the articles implied. But you look at the number of times I've written about these type of things happening over the years, that it's hard not to imagine that something highly strange is happening. So, in totality, I've written 10 books on missing people in the woods, in urban areas, and in suburban areas. I made 2 documentaries. And I've done over 110 different videos on this channel that are available to be watched. And I've touched on different cases every time. Yet mainstream media will not touch this topic. Why do you think that's so? I've shown you that I've been throttled back on major networks. I've given you nothing but facts. I don't give you theory. I don't give you hypothesis. I let you come to your own conclusions. One thing I do is I sincerely appreciate you for hanging in there, for supporting me, and supporting our work. And we're going to need that continued support as things get tougher. I want you to have a good long weekend coming up, Memorial Day weekend. Think about every soldier that gave their life for you. And know that, hey, our village, you, me, and the people who write these kind things on our board, every one of those comments I read and I appreciate. So thanks again. I'll give you one quick look here of the park. I'll give you a little scan. We got a mountainside right here. Still have a little snow on the lower mountains. Give you a little zoom up on those far mountains. Just before I started to do these videos today, a couple eagles were flying around out there. Well, the next train's coming, so I'm gonna have to sign off. You guys take care. We'll see you soon.